Well, ladies and gents, the time has finally come, the bike has finally arrived, and the new steed, which will be accompanying me for my adventures for the foreseeable future, which is currently being concealed with digital means because I don't actually have a cover for the bike yet, is the Aprilia Tuareg 660. I have decided it's finally time for me to taste the delights of owning an Italian motorcycle, and as such I've gone for this 2023 Aprilia Tuareg with its 660cc engine, 80 horsepower, 70 newton meters of torque, fully adjustable 240mm of suspension travel front and back, 18-litre tank, 5-inch TFT display, and a bunch of extras because this bike is actually an ex-demo bike which I bought from Limbecher in Stuttgart. Unfortunately nowhere near where I live, so I had to wait 2.5 bloody weeks for them to deliver the thing. But because this bike is an ex-demo, it came with 350 kilometers on the clock, cost pretty much exactly the same as a brand spanking new one, but I got a whole bunch of really quite awesome extras with it. I've got the Aprilia factory crash bars. I've also got, which you probably noticed when I was walking around it, the SC Project end can. Coming further down here, we've got the Aprilia center stand. Swinging over the top of the bike, the beautiful soft finish comfort seat, perfect for my soft delicate bottom on those longer rides. Coming down the left side of the bike, we've got the quick shifter with down blipper. As well as all those things, I also negotiated a great price and a hefty discount on the Bluetooth module, which allows you to have navigation instructions, music and phone instructions, all that kind of stuff, displayed on the 5-inch TFT display here. Unfortunately, that's not yet arrived. There's even more delay with getting that than there was with getting the bike itself, so yeah, more about that in the future. So altogether, really am happy with the deal I've got here. A practically nearly new bike with all of the gubbins that I really would have liked to have gotten anyway. There is my new bike. This is the thing that's going to be carrying me around for the foreseeable future, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the adventures with you. Well, I say some, I basically mean all. So far, I am really loving the crap out of the bike. I'll be honest, it hasn't been a smooth ride, but we'll get to that later on and I'll tell you exactly why my experience with Aprilia as a whole has been less than smooth so far. But now that it seems like a lot of those bumps are ironed out, I am thoroughly enjoying riding this, quite frankly, stunning machine. I'll be honest, looking at pictures of it when it originally came out, I wasn't that taken with the thing, but when you stand next to it, it's a formidable looking beast. The thing is huge, but the incredible part is it weighs only 204 kilos, fully fueled, which puts it at 35 kilos lighter than my KTM was. But there we go, now that I've introduced you to the bike, let's get on the thing, get out there, make it make some noise, and I'll tell you basically why this is the bike that I've chosen and why I'm so happy with that choice. So without further ado, let's get on it. Well, here we are out on the machine, and I've got to say, so far I think I've made the right choice. So far this thing does all the stuff that I've always wanted from a bike. I mean, first of all, it rails wonderfully into the corners. It does lots of cracks and popples on deceleration, and this is my first time owning a bike with a downshift blipper as well, which I have to be honest, I'm quite enjoying so far. At first it was a bit strange getting used to not blipping the throttle myself, but then on the upshifts, oh, it has that lovely pop in between every shift. Bop, pop, pop. Absolutely love it. Love it! I've had quick shifters before, but I've never had one that has the pop between the shifts. It's amazing how something so small can make you so happy. And of course the SC Project can adds an extra little bit of throatiness to the bike. Not a huge amount different to the original stock can, but just a nice little extra edge of bark and roar. But the real winner is still that glorious induction noise. I'm sure further down the line when I stick a foam or a sports air filter in there, that noise will be even more glorious. I think also once I do something about the screen, maybe a spoiler on top or maybe something completely different to take away a little bit of that wind roar, I will be able to enjoy this amazing soundtrack even better. It does bother me a little bit that sometimes the Aprilia on the fuel cap can vibrate itself upside down. That's not okay. And obviously I'm still in the break-in phase as well. First 1,000 kilometers of the bike, first 600 miles, which means keeping the revs below 6,000, not gunning it too much, keeping things varied, keeping things gentle. So once that period's over as well, I'm going to be able to give it a lot more pasty and just bring the noise out of the thing, and the performance as well. According to the manual, this bike also has self-cancelling. Oh, there you go. It has cancelled off. It takes bloody ages, but it has got them. Speaking of bringing things out, the temperature, not quite as warm as I had hoped, is bringing the warmth out of my poor body, so just need to quickly remedy the situation. Love that automatic rev up on start as well. But yeah, the old Nox Urban Pro Mark II being a bit too effective on this 18 degree late August day. Not quite as warm as I'd expected, so the Nox Mark I outer shell layer doing a great job keeping the wind off. But anyway, back to the bike. So far, after a few miles, I've had a few rides around on the bike already. The comfort seat to my sensitive derriere is a great improvement over the stock one. Right, left or right? To the left there's a bendy road sign, so... And power-wise, with this 660cc engine, or 659 if you want to be exact. Oh, that was the curve. I don't think it was worth the sign, lads. But yeah, power-wise, something that popped up in a lot of the comments from you guys was that, am I going to be happy with an 80 horsepower bike after coming from a long line of litre bikes? And I can hand on my heart say that I think I'm definitely going to be absolutely a-okay with the power of this machine. The engine is so strong. After every shift, it just surges forward from 4,000 RPM. And although on paper, it's got 20 horses less than the RS660 and the Tuono 660, but what those top figures don't tell you is that this bike, when you look at the dyno charts compared, actually has 20 to 30% more grunt than those other two bikes, up to about 6,000 RPM. That's when the power really comes in for those bikes with their racy engines. But this thing, it just pushes on from the middle of the range. So yeah, power is not going to be an issue with this bike. And the best thing about all of that is that I'm going to be able to use all of the power of the bike. I'm never going to need a racetrack or a runway in order to really get to the full potential of the bike, which is something I really like the sound of. I'm going to be able to get all of my money's worth from this machine all of the time. I've got absolutely zero idea where I'm going. I don't know this area at all, but just thought I'd get out and see where the wheels take me. And the best thing was, I was settling in ready to finish another Norway video, and then the missus actually said, "Oh bloody hell, look at the weather out there, I think you've really got to go out and ride your new bike." So either she's the most awesome wife the world has ever known, or she's having an affair and the plumber was coming round. Either way, I'm out on the bike, so I'll take it where I can get it. That plumber is doing me a service. Yeah, definitely all the grunt I need. Fast enough to stick a smile on my face. But enough about how I feel about it now I'm on it. I've promised to answer you the question of why did I choose it? Because I'm sure many of you have seen the review that I made of the Yamaha Tenere 700 World Raid. And to be honest, I gushed about that bike. I really did enjoy it, and from that review you probably would have been forgiven for assuming that that was going to be the bike that I'd end up with. First big reason why not is that it was just way too expensive for my budget. Couldn't have afforded it even if I'd wanted to, which would have brought me back down to the standard Tenere 700, which in itself is undeniably a fantastic machine. The sales numbers, the comments from all you guys telling me about your experience with the bike obviously left me feeling that it would have been a great choice. But moving down from the World Raid to the standard version would have meant first of all the narrower and undeniably uncomfortable seat. There's no getting away from the fact that the majority of people who've ridden on that bike for any length of time find the seat pretty unbearable. And then after that, the standard version loses a bit of suspension travel, and it also loses, sadly, a fair bit of suspension performance. There's no preload adjustment on the front forks, and overall, from hours and hours and hours, maybe even days spent on forums, it became clear to me that the bike is very obviously softly sprung, which for somebody of my size, weighing just over 100 kilos just out of the shower, would have meant I'd be instantly looking at fiddling with the fork internals to try and add some preload, or to upgrade the springs, replacing the shock spring just to make the bike sprung right to deal with my weight. That's something I didn't really want to be bothering with. Whereas on the Tuareg, it felt to me at least like it was pretty decently sprung. Obviously at some point I may want to think about upping the springs because I've got the preload pretty high on the back. and maybe should add a little bit on the front, because I do get a bit of dive on the front when I brake it. But the real bonus is, obviously, other than the fact that I've got a whole bunch of extra travel front and rear on this bike, 240mm versus 190, but I've also got full adjustment front and back. That's preload, compression and rebound damping. So that was a clear win, tick for the Tuareg over the Tenere. And then leading nicely on from the suspension, the next thing is the wheels. Obviously both bikes spoke wheels, both 18 rear, 21 front. But for me, as a beginner and at best part-time off-roader, I do plan to do more off-road, but at the very, very best, I'm going to be doing it sporadically here and there. I don't live near any trails, so I'm not going to be hitting the bendies in the dirt every single weekend. So that means that for me, the fact that Tuareg takes tubeless tyres, whereas the Tenere is a tubed bike, that's a real victory. That's one less faff I need to think about every time I get a set of tyres changed. And that does of course mean, potentially if I want to take this thing properly adventuring, I'm somewhat limited in not being able to quickly change a tube on the trail, but at the same time it does mean I can whack a plug in and carry on. It's alright, love. Bike's only 200 kilos, it doesn't hurt when it hits you. The KTM, now that would have been a different story, that would have wiped you out. So there again, for me at least, your mileage may of course vary, but that's another clear tick win for the Tuareg. Oh, look at that. Not allowed down there. And this place is covered in horse shit. Not exactly what I wanted to cover my shiny new bike in, but there we go. It's going to get dirty at some point, isn't it? The next thing, which I briefly touched upon already, is the seat. The seat on the Tenere is very narrow, very pointy. Even on the World Raid it started to feel a bit pinchy after my 40-minute test ride. Whereas this one, especially with the comfort seat, another clear win for the Tuareg over the Tenere. It's wider, the comfort seat is far more supportive, and so far my rear has been much more comfortable. Look at this, I wasn't expecting to get any dirty trail action on this. Well, it's more of a dirty cobbled street, but there we go. Look at that, standing up like a proper off-roader. Oh, and look at that as well. Vehicles not allowed. Oh well. He's already gone and stalled it. That's because you're trying to do a U-turn in 4th gear, you plonker. That'll do it. The only criticism of the seat on this bike is that it does get quite hot. But depending how you look at it, the KTM had a heated seat, and so does the Aprilia. After that, we've got the ergonomics of the bike. The seating position, ultimately quite similar. I think maybe the peg to arse ratio on this bike is a little bit more sporty than the Tenere was. But on the other side, the handlebars are in a far more comfortable position for me and for my size. The bars are wider, they're higher, and I think they're actually a little bit further forwards as well. So in terms of the sitting position and the riding position, I feel both more sporty and more comfortable at the same time, if that's possible. And the next thing that springs to mind, as I've just noticed that the gauge has dropped down by 1, is the fuel tank. The standard Tenere rocks in with a 16-litre tank, which in the bigger picture, if you bear in mind that the tank on my Honda CB1000R was a 16.2-litre tank, and I never had any troubles touring with that thing, despite the fact that it had not the greatest fuel economy. So a 16-litre tank on a twin-cylinder 700cc bike with far superior fuel economy obviously is not really going to be an issue at all. Add to that the fact that this bike has an 18-litre tank and very comparable fuel economy. The extra 2 litres of tank range on this bike over the Tenere is once again another resounding tick for the Italian, especially when it's impressively coupled with the fact that with this bike filling up with 2 litres more fuel, it comes in at the same wet weight as the Tenere. Now obviously a fairly big chunk of my decision making came down to the hearts of these two machines, the motors. And this is where things aren't quite so clear cut, I suppose. Unsurprisingly, and true to pretty much every account from every person who's sat on both of these bikes, at the very, very low end, the Tenere felt like it was a lot more pokey. It had a lot more oomph right from the get-go. The motor on the Tenere is actually as well, in my opinion, much smoother. There was a lot less vibrations all over the rev range than there are on this bike. But after having thought about it for a little while after my test ride, the feeling I did have overall was that the Yamaha, although grunty at the bottom end, it was so linear and so accessible that it actually left me feeling a little bit cold. Whereas this one, yeah, it's a tiny little bit more buzzy, and yeah, the bottom end is a little bit weaker. just feels like it's just got a more exciting feel to it. Like that power from 3,500 RPM up, and then intoxicating induction roar just completely left me feeling like the motor in this Italian stallion is the one that's going to prevent me from getting bored for the longest. It just feels like it's just got that little bit of extra pizzazz. Can't believe I just used the word pizzazz. What am I, 80? And also, despite spending the entire test ride on the Tenere trying to basically sell the bike to myself and to convince myself that the jerky throttle wouldn't bother me, the more I actually considered it, I actually remembered that when I had the jerky throttle on the Yamaha FZ1, it got on my tits unendingly, and I tried everything to fix it, and it never really fully got rid of the problem. And I've just got this horrible fear that it's going to be exactly the same with the Tenere. I mean, obviously, there's people out there, loads of you have said to me that you fixed it somehow or another, and that's great for you. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you're not as sensitive as I am, maybe I'm just a clumsier rider than you are, but I do definitely have the feeling that the throttle response on this bike is vastly superior. The gentlest of threading the power back on. It's so nice. And that's also after I've spent a little bit of time messing with the settings. I'm in the individual rider mode, and I've got the engine braking reduced right down to the minimum, and it just makes it absolutely buttery smooth. And obviously we can't really talk about the engines without talking about the elephant in the room, which is reliability. The dirty, great big R word. And I've just realised, I'm very conscious of the fact that I am still absolutely spamming the shit out of the indicator cancellation button. It's something I know about, it's something I'm trying to deal with. I was actually getting on quite well with the KTM because the automatic indicator cancellation system was a bit better than it is on this Italian, and I feel like I was getting somewhere, but it turns out as soon as I get on a different bike, everything gets reset to 0 and I spam the shit out of it. I was embarrassed at myself editing the test ride videos on those two other bikes, just how much I was pressing that button. I'm going to wear the thing out if I'm not careful. I'm trying. Just know I am trying. Tell you what, U-turning on this thing is as easy as pie. It just feels so light. But yeah, reliability. Obviously, you cannot argue with the fact that Yamaha's reputation for reliability is vastly superior to that of Aprilia. And obviously the lack of electronic rider aids and fly-by-wire throttle and all that kind of stuff on the Yamaha means less things to go wrong. But here's the thing, I really want to love riding this bike. I really want to love caning it around, squeezing the performance out of the thing, and that just doesn't really necessarily lend itself to dependability and reliability. They're boring words. They're words that you associate with a sewing machine or a tumble dryer. I want something that gets my blood pressure up, gets my heart pumping when I jump on top of it. I want something that gives me goosebumps when I bash through the gearbox with a pop after every shift. Just like that. That makes me so happy. What is this? An off-roady tracky type thing with no sign saying no bikes. Yeah, so foreseeing the excitement and the enjoyment and the rewarding riding that I would get out of the Italian, I decided that the reliability and the dependability aren't necessarily the route I wanted to take, especially as they came at the cost of that slightly cold feeling engine, that horrible snatchy throttle, the suspension that would need at least an extra £1,000 bunged into it to make it work for my weight and size. Oh, and the horrible uncomfortable seat as well. There we go, bit of traction control. But yeah, to that whole reliability issue, I will say, I haven't come into this completely blind. I've done my due diligence. I spent hours and hours and hours again on the Aprilia forums, and it seems like the days of incredibly unreliable Italian engineering are very much behind us. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, and I will get to my tales of woe later on, but it's better than it was. The only real problems I could find were things like dodgy fuel sender. The early bikes had a horrible stumble in the fueling around 4,000 RPM, which has since been fixed with an update. There were a few people complaining of dead batteries, but I think that's just a bit of a case of dodgy componentry or bikes that have been sat in the dealership and the batteries have been allowed to go flat. And then on top of that, there was a great big problem with a leaky water pump / oil pump gasket, which was leaving a lot of people with oil or water leaks, or both. And it seems all of these things have mostly been ironed out, and if they haven't, then a little bit of an oil leak, well, that's just par for the course with owning an Italian bike, isn't it, surely? And above all else, as far as dealing with Japanese reliability, build quality and their warranty service goes, I've already had such a terrible experience with Honda, who basically told me to go sling it, your bike is supposed to rust, it's your friggin' fault for leaving it out in the rain and it's your fault for using it in the winter. I'm actually not willing to put that much weight on the value of having a Yamaha guarantee, because if it's anything like the Honda one, I'll take my chances with the Aprilia. Again, I'm willing to gamble a little bit in exchange for that excitement and the buzz that I think this bike is going to give me. And also the fact that not every dick and his dog has got one. I have not seen a single one of these on the road in northern Germany, or anywhere in fact while I've been out riding, whereas I've definitely seen a few T7s. I know there may be a couple of potential teething problems. I know I may have to tip a bit of oil into the bike every now and again, but it just was undeniable to me. I could not hide the fact that the more I thought about it and the more I looked at it on paper and in my experience, the Tuareg is the better bike. I mean, I could be wrong. I could spend the next year or two proving myself completely wrong. But you know what? I'm willing to give that a chance, because I'm willing to try and have the most fun on this Italian beauty. And most of all, you can never accuse me of being boring and going with the trends. Oh yeah. Even without twisting the bars up a little bit, it feels comfortable standing up, giving it a little bit of pasty on the gravel. I absolutely love it. I have the feeling me and this thing are going to have a lot of fun, as long as some dickhead doesn't run into the back of me in the traffic again. Well, there we go, the off-road ABS works, even though that was in road mode. No vehicles allowed that way. Unfortunately, that's the shape of things here in northern Germany. And then the final nail in the coffin of the Tenere's chances in this competition was the price. When these bikes first came out, the Tuareg was coming in at £1,500, euros, dollars, whatever you use to buy your bread, more than the Tenere. Whereas for some reason in Germany right now, a brand new Tenere is going for just under 11.5 grand. Whereas if you shop around a bit, you can pick up a brand new Tuareg for between 10.5. So that's crazy that there's been this massive change of 1,500 more to as much as 1,500 less than the Yamaha for this fine Italian filly, which just also made the offer that I got with this bike impossible to ignore. I mean, yeah, sure, I've got 6 months less guarantee than if I'd bought a new one. I've got 350 kilometers that I don't know how carefully or how respectfully they were ridden, but overall, I don't really care. Quite happy with the induced warranty situation, because by the time I get to valve clearance check time, I would actually quite like to attempt the job myself and save the 1,000 odd euros that it's going to cost to get a garage to do it. And if I'm outside the warranty, that doesn't matter. But of course the Yamaha Tenere wasn't the only possible option that I could have gone for looking at middleweight adventurers. The obvious competition, I suppose, would be the KTM 790 or the KTM 890. In the case of both of them, in order to be a fair comparison with this bike, with its fully adjustable suspension, it would have to really be the R version, which means basically out of the budget. Forget it, those things are so expensive. And for some unknown reason, they're holding their prices so very well that I simply can't afford one unless it's far too old and has far too much mileage. But on top of that, I am quite happy to hold up my hands and say I was perfectly okay with the KTM 1090 Adventure. That bike had just the right level of tech I was comfortable with, and it had a great track record from the forums, because again, I spent a long time reading before I bought that bike. So in my opinion, the 1090 Adventure was the last properly good bike that KTM actually made. And I mean properly good, not just in terms of performance. Their bikes are irrefutably incredible. They're fantastic at what they do. But in terms of reliability, I know I said I don't want to get too bogged down with the word reliability, but in terms of reliability, I've just heard far too many tales of wobbly front wheels, switchgear failures, TFT failures, IMU failures, just anything on the KTM with the word failure after it. Am I allowed to go down here? Probably not. There's no sign, but I do actually have to start heading home soon. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon to have a look at the MRI scan from my foot yesterday. Finally convinced the doctor to splash some cash to find out exactly what's going on with my bones. But yeah, far too many tales of woe from the 790 and the 890 series. I just don't feel like those bike families are steady yet. I mean, he says that on a brand new model that has only been around for a year or two. Plus, on top of that, I've also heard far too many stories, some of them first-hand from your friend and mine, the Likeable Rider, that getting appointments for warranty issues, getting parts, getting servicing in Germany for a KTM is an absolute nightmare. I mean, from what I've heard, and obviously that means everything is hearsay, if you get a problem with your KTM at the beginning of the riding season, you might as well just stick it in the garage and forget about biking for the summer. So first of all, if you can get an appointment, you're lucky, and then if they find out what's wrong with it and need to get parts, you're also pretty much screwed for a couple of months while that's happening. So, KTMs are all out. Awesome bikes, but not for me. Next bike that a lot of people were suggesting was the Tiger 900, and I did actually very briefly try a Tiger 900 a little while ago, and to be completely honest, I found it a little bit boring. I mean, they look amazing, but I found the engine unexciting, I found the exhaust note boring, and I also found the motor itself pretty vibey and rough feeling as a result of that T-plane crank. Coupled with the fact as well that to get a Tiger 900, we're over the budget unless to get a used one, and there just aren't that many available, and the ones that are available are costing a fortune. The next step on for that involved me looking for a very long time at Tiger 800, particularly the XC models. I could get an 8-year-old bike with 30,000 kilometers plus on the clock for the same price that I got this thing here. And that was just a massive no-brainer for me. Bit of a shame. I did really enjoy the bike that I test rode in 2015. I mean, it was a long time ago, but they can't have changed that much, can they? Yeah, so the Triumphs also out. Again, awesome bikes, just not for me, and a little bit on the expensive side. Rather unexplicably so. But I think that's just a case of British bikes in Germany. Bugger. Luckily the U-turn game is strong. And what else could I have considered? The Norden 901. I think I will just refer you to all of my comments about the KTM 890, including, sadly, just far too expensive. And then there is literally the elephant in the room, the BMW GS. And to be completely honest, it's just not a bike that's ever really interested me. I'm just not turned on by them. They don't get my juices flowing. For what I want to do with my bike, they're too big, they're too heavy, they're too complicated, and overall, they're just too bloody expensive. You think about it. To have all the same tricks and whistles, I could get 2 of these for the price of 1 GS, which if we added them both together would probably weigh the same, but to be completely honest, I don't know what I'd do with the second one. After that, another one of the most suggested bikes actually was the Suzuki V-Strom 800, which I'll give it to you guys, it's a great suggestion. It's a good looking machine, looks like Suzuki have done a great job of providing a really capable, mile-munching adventure machine. Problem for me is, it's just too heavy. I think they've really missed the mark with the weight of the thing. I mean, if you're going to be spending most of your time on the road and you don't ever plan to chuck it in the mud, it's not really an issue. But for me, a new bike that has considerably less power than, but the same amount of weight as my old KTM, is just not a winning combination. And as such, I didn't even consider trying one. So yeah, Suzuki was a non-starter. After that, pretty much the only things I can think of that are left are Honda's offerings of the Africa Twin and then the Transalp after that. And for both of those, what can I say? just forget it. As far as I'm concerned, Honda is literally dead to me. I will never ever again consider throwing my leg over a Honda bike unless I absolutely have to. And I won't go into that in too much detail. For that, you can watch the video up there in the right about my experience with the Honda. I know the engine didn't blow up, it wasn't anything shocking like that, but I just think their general treatment of their customers and their general attitude towards quality of finish is absolutely disgusting. And for that reason, I'm out. But naturally, the course of true love seldom runneth smoothly, and my experience with getting the bike wasn't exactly bump-free, because I bought this bike, as I said at the beginning, from a Stuttgart-based dealership called Limbecker. It was delivered to me to my front door with the 350 kilometers on it. The first thing that got up my nose was the fact that during the negotiation phase, the dude I bought the bike from said to me multiple times that as a great big fat goodie to me as choosing to buy a bike from him, the bike would be fully fueled when it arrived to me. Sure enough, the bike came off the van, switched on the key, half a tank of fuel. That was a big fat moment. So I contained my rage, said my friendly farewells to the delivery driver, and went out on my first test ride of my brand new shiny bike. Only to find out the bloody thing was crabbing like crazy. So when I got home with my vernier calipers in hand, I had a quick check over the thing, and the fork legs were mounted at different heights in the clamps. The handlebars weren't mounted centrally. The left grip was mounted a whole centimetre further inwards than the right grip. This is rubbish, I need to get over there. Run away! Run away! But worst of all, the right side chain adjuster was adjusted a good 1.5 millimetres further back than the left one. Oh Jesus. This was not the ride out I was planning for. So the whole time, I was having to hold the bars to the right to keep the bike in a straight line. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, naturally I got the spanners out and adjusted everything myself. It's not quite perfect. I've ordered a chain alignment tool so I can have a proper go at it later on. That'll arrive tomorrow, hopefully. But the worst part of all is I emailed the place that I bought the bike from. Oh, and also I nearly forgot. The chain was so loose that it could actually touch the swing arm. Yeah, anyway, I sent an email to the guy I bought the bike from, and he has proceeded for 3 days to completely ignore me. So I smashed 10.5 grand up them, and the guy can't even be bothered to reply to my email to explain why he cocked up and why the bike was in such a shit set-up state. So all I can say is if you ever find yourself in a position to buy a bike from Limbecker and Limbecker, run for the hills, hold on tight to your money, and charge away with all of your might to somewhere else where you might get a better deal. Although, if you're in Germany, I think your chances are pretty slim wherever you go. Anyway, as I charge onto the motorway and try and fire myself away from this rain, I'm going to send you back in time to the bit where it was still sunny, and I've already summed up this video. Internet, YouTube-based time travel, eh? And there you go. Hopefully that explains to you why, potentially against my better judgment, I have opted to squeeze a hot-blooded Italian between my legs and to charge forth into the unknown with her. Please do gladly leave your congratulations, your celebrations, and your venomous vitriol in the comments below. Tell me what you think about the new bike, whether you like it, whether you hate it. I just want to know what you think, and I'm really looking forward to showing you more of this thing. Otherwise, please do like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, share this video with someone else if you think they might like it, and above all else, keep yours shiny, keep yourself out of trouble, and I will see you out there. I've been AndyManCam, this is the new Aprilia Tuareg, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra!